Good evening. I'm Cynthia Elliott, President of the Rochester Board of Education, here with my colleagues and the superintendent, interim superintendent, as well as Chief Operations Officer Michael Schmidt, to talk about the FMP plan. Chief Schmidt will provide us with additional information regarding Phase 3 of the Facilities Modernization Plan. The board will ask whatever questions. The superintendent will also participate. This will be the last meeting before the board votes on the plan, December 22nd. And so, Chief Schmidt, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you and good evening.
Good evening, President Elliott.
Oh,
Vice
I'm
President
sorry.
LeBron,
Turn it over
Board
to the
Commissioners. I'm
superintendent.
going to start us off this
Sure.
evening, and then I will turn it over to our Chief Operating Officer,
My
Mike
apologies.
Schmidt. No problem. So just to go through a little bit of what we will be doing today is today's work session, we're going to review the short list of schools under consideration, along with the associated rough cost estimates based on what we know right now. Reminder that we're really focusing on the priorities of health and safety, infrastructure, and the unique program needs. We're going to review preliminary cost estimates to stay within the available maximum cost allowance, which is also which referred to as MCA, which is a calculation that tells us what is eligible for aid, and also on board docs is a more detailed explanation on how maximum cost allowance is calculated. And we're going to focus on our recommended buildings this evening. Once again, just really focusing on and prioritizing our assumptions of health and safety and the infrastructure needs that are needed within the building. Staying within that maximum cost allowance, the MCA, and what is allowable expenditures. Also, remaining within the 5% local share, and adhering to the core model. If you remember at our previous meetings, we went through what a core model looks like in a building, K6, 7, 8, and 9, 12, and staying within that core model as best as possible. Just from a historical perspective, where we are today, what has been renovated or went through FMP during phase 1 and 2 in the northeast zone. School 22, School 28, School 50, East, Franklin, and Freddie Thomas all have gone through either phase 1 or phase 2. In the northwest zone, schools renovated during phase 1 and phase 2 were School 5, School 7, School 17, School 54, the Charlotte campus, as well as Edison. And in the south zone, schools renovated through FMP 1 and 2 were School 2, School 4, School 10, School 12, School 15, School 16, World of Inquiry School number 58, Monroe, and School Without Walls. Today, what we're going to examine a little bit more closely and costs associated with is our short list, which consists of Dr. Martin Luther King School number 9, Northwest Junior High at Douglas, East High School, Edison High, Franklin High School, and Wilson Commencement High School, as well as just a reminder that we have swing space available at Jefferson and Marshall. So to take us through each of the schools, I'm going to turn it over to our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Schmidt.
Good evening, President Elliott, Vice President LeBron, Commissioners, Interim Superintendent Peluso. Before I begin, I'd be remiss in not introducing, excuse me, Steve Rebholz from SWBR and Erica Abandazari from Watts. They have been integral in helping us pull together a whole variety of information that since July we've been working together with our team. So they're here tonight to join us and be ready to answer any questions if you have them. The 6 schools that we're on our short list now for renovation. Some are a reminder from a previous meeting, but just to go through these. School number 9, we are focusing on an enrollment capacity of 652 students. We are renovating it as a pre-K 6. It is the programs, the bilingual program and a community school are really the key academic programs there, excuse me. We are projecting an estimated cost, and that's a key word in all this, an estimated cost of $30 million, about almost just a little bit shy of $31 million. Our scope of work will be very extensive in the school area of the building, not in the art center. Although mechanical systems are overlapping in that building, the primary scope of the infrastructure work will be in the school proper. We'll have upgraded to the classrooms, infrastructure upgrades, excuse me, classroom renovations, flexible classroom spaces, and certainly upgrades and security throughout the building. Our next school, as we discussed a couple weeks ago, is Douglas Junior High. We are focusing on an enrollment capacity of 880 students. It is being renovated, projected as a grade level 7 and 8. That is in alignment with our policy decision from earlier in the summer. It will have a middle school honors academy program that Dr. Black and Dr. Keelan had talked about in the past. We'll provide more information forthcoming. We are projecting a cost of $91,319,505. Once again, keyword estimated. This will be a double MCA, as will school number 9. Once again, for those of us who have been in Douglas, we certainly know that it's a very needy facility. Infrastructure upgrades, HVAC certainly are a priority. We have some very narrow corridors in the classroom areas of the building. We also have a goal of putting some flexible classroom spaces. All the classrooms will be fully renovated, and upgrading the security is also a priority there. If you coming into the building, the secure vestibule area needs to be more expanded so we can have a better control of our single point of access. Our next school up is East Upper and Lower, excuse me. 1,300 students. We are renovating it, projecting it still remaining as a grade level 6 through 12 as part of the EPO. It has programs in culinary, vision, teaching and learning institute, information technology, medical careers, and optics. Projected costs in this phase, remember this is a phase 1 and phase 2 program. This will be the final phase of work there, around $22 million. And we will complete the work started in earlier phases, primarily infrastructure, HVAC work in the remaining areas of the building, the auditorium, music wing, as well as the physical education spaces, and are all part of that final area of the building that we need to touch. And then obviously with infrastructure upgrades and the security aspect of that will also be a priority in this phase. Edison, as we spoke about earlier, 1,500 students, grades 9 through 12, 4 career pathways programs. Our focal point of CTE across the district. We're estimating a cost of about $69 million. The infrastructure work there is expansive, as we've discussed in the earlier work sessions. We will also be investing significant amounts of resources in our CTE programs. Once they are selected in alignment with the academic plan from Dr. Black and her team. And then certainly with all these upgrading our security, our single point of entry, as we've discussed here in previous work sessions. Franklin Lower Upper, it is being renovated as a 912. Remember, currently a 712. It will be a comprehensive high school, and which will have wide-ranging programs in a whole variety of areas. Once again, the academic plan will outline some of the focus areas for that 9 through 12 program. As everybody knows, Franklin is an expansive building, much like Edison and East. It needs major infrastructure work, security, flexible classroom spaces, and we're looking to expand CTE programming in that building as well. The number here is somewhat staggering, $153 million. This will also be in a double MCA as all the schools that we're projecting in this phase. And finally, the Joseph Wilson Foundation Academy, excuse me. 880 students, 9 through 12. Wilson High School. It will, as an IB program, AVID is one of its primary academic areas. This building, is, as we talked about in the past, has a whole range of needs. It's a wood frame structure. We need to start from the foundation and work our way to the roof, but it needs to be fully renovated. Much like Douglas, right size in the hallways, right size in the classrooms. Excuse me. Flexible classroom spaces, and then upgrading security. The main security entrance or single point of entry in the vestibule there is going to have to be revamped to be part of the focus of this project. $105 million would also be a double MCA initiative. Dr. Peluso?
Thank you. I'm hearing a little bit of an echo here. We good? Thank you. So just on that last slide, the previous slide, I do want to make one correction. That is Wilson Commencement, not Wilson Foundation. We will update that and make sure that is posted. Sorry about that. So commencement, that is commencement. So we can go to the next slide. So posted on board docs, and also you'll see the previous phases of the schools that we're looking at, and also schools that have gone through some capital improvement that are not going through the FMP phases. But I just wanted to share, in the South Zone, these are the schools that have not been renovated: 3, 19, 23, 29, and 35. In the Northwest, it's 34, 42, 43, Rise, which is School 106, Jefferson, and then School 20, School 39, School 46, and School 52 in the Northeast Zone. Also, just want to kind of make point of some schools that have been built after 1990, have been taken in possession of major construction with School 8, School 45, Freddie Thomas, Soda, and Wilson Foundation in that sense, just to have a perspective of why those buildings are not in consideration. Just to refresh our memory, some of the decisions that were made, school buildings that have been closed. So these are buildings that we currently don't have in our possession anymore. School 15, which has been moved to School 1, but was on 494 Averill Ave, that is no longer within our possession. School 22, although School 22 is moved. The building at 27 Zimbridge Street, School 25 on Goodman, and then School 35 on St. Jacob. 36 on St. Jacob Street, and that's, I should know that one. School with closed beds code. So these are different than the school building closures, right? In beds closed, we've also have closed School 1, School 20, School 36, School 43, School 44, School 57, Charlotte High School, and Leadership Academy. So the next portion of what are some important decisions and approvals once we get through the identified schools is really taking a close look at our managed choice policy, the impact on zones that has, and then the seats available within zones. How we're utilizing our buildings, how we're utilizing buildings right now that currently don't have students. Some hold programs, some hold offices. How do we utilize those? And then ultimately looking at our instructional capacity, our instructional needs within the district, and number of building needs as well. So that's going to be the next major work that has to go on after we decide on what the schools that are going to be going through FMP, and then really engaging the community and the families on our next steps from there. So at this point, we will open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Peluso. I'll start at the end with Commissioner Adams.
Yeah, I'm curious about, you explained how East was a part of phase 1 and 2. These numbers, these projected costs, like on the schools that are just getting first-time FMP, are these to complete it, or will they still have to go and hope for another FMP project? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. So when we project a double MCA project, it needs to be substantially completed. The understanding or the agreement with the state of New York, if we take advantage of the double MCA, which we would take, the idea is to only move the students into swing space once, take them to swing space, renovate the building, and then bring them back. but you also have to have a 10-year period where you cannot do any reimbursable capital work there. So much different than the strategy at Edison and East where it was multiple phases. The double MCA projects here, Wilson, Douglas, Franklin, School 9, would all be double MCA and would be brought to substantial completion once the projects are done. Kind of like our homes, nothing ever is totally done.
Yeah.
But the key to that is you cannot get any reimbursable capital work. So you wouldn't see that in our CIP, for example, in the out years. It's 10 years after the building is completed, though.
Okay, thank you.
So before I go to Commissioner Malloy, Chief Smith, can you explain what MCA is to our audience? And why we are doubling it?
Sure. So the maximum cost allowance is basically the allowable work that you can do within on a particular building and being reimbursed for it. It's the algorithm in this sense is brought together and is worked through and provided by the state of New York. The idea of it is that you can do up to the maximum cost allowance, the MCA, and then you have, in the past it has required a 5-year reset. So if we're going to do work at, let's just pretend numbers for a moment, at school X, as a $20 million MCA, we would do $20 million worth of work.
Let me just take you back for a minute. So when you say maximum cost allowance, meaning that the state is only allow us to use your example, to spend $20 million. That's what the maximum cost allowance
Exactly.
is. That's
Exactly.
okay.
So if
All
we
right.
double it.
So why would we be doubling it?
I think the primary reason and the strategy we utilized in phase 2 with our elementary schools was only moving the students to swing space once.
Okay.
So it requires, if you do it traditionally, it requires a 5-year reset. So you do the $20 million worth of work and then you pause, bring the kids back, you're building in a sense.
For 10 years in this case, if it's a double.
No, in the first example, if we went with just a traditional approach, you would, for my example, we would do $20 million worth of work. In a sense, you'd have half the building done. The students would come back. You'd have to wait 5 years for the MCA to reset, and then you do the other half of the building. The double MCA allows us to do $40 million worth of work. The students go to swing space once. We complete the project, complete the building. They come back, but because they're kind of front-loading us 2 different MCAs, that 5-year reset, it's kind of that's where the 10 years comes from. We're avoiding the 5-year reset because we really believe that moving our students one time into swing space was much more beneficial. So that was a strategy that we utilized in phase 2.
So the double MCA is contained within the $475 million?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Malloy?
Thank you. Just a couple questions. Hopefully some of them are pretty quick. I'm wondering if the MCA, does that include pool work at any of those locations? Like I was wondering at East, we're talking about $22 million more in renovations there. Their pool viewing area is pretty old at this point, and the pool itself is going to require more renovations. So are there pools in our district that will be renovated under the plan?
At these buildings, yes. Any particular area of the building would be eligible for that work and to have reimbursed on. It's not easy to list all the different aspects of a building that would be done. At East, though, the auditorium, the physical education wing, and the main office area are the areas that we've not done in the previous phases, so that would be eligible on the pool. If it needs renovation, so to speak, then that would be eligible to be worked on. Decisions have to be made, right? We have $22 million. We have to decide how if you choose to have it on the list, we still have to make some decisions long-term about what we can afford. But that any mechanical system upgrade like a pool is certainly eligible for reimbursement.
I think it's great, just especially with East. It's one of our only schools that has a pool of that size and viewing area. So we've talked about having, at least one pool that is a hub for our competitive teams. And that would be a natural place, for that. But we have other pools that are in disrepair as well. My second question is, the closed schools, did I hear that those closed schools, like 25, they're no longer in our actual possession? Did I hear that correctly?
That is correct.
All right, and where did they go, like, under whose, is it the city?
Exactly. They were returned to the city by resolution.
Okay.
So the most recent one was School 25. It was, I think, in July of 22, I believe, we returned it to the city. So those buildings have all been back. And 15 was taken down, and that's where now the gym and that area of the building is.
Yeah.
That's the old 15 building. So the other buildings right now are in possession of the city. They're not in our inventory.
Okay, and then my final question is that, do we have any campuses with buildings that are in our possession that really can't easily be renovated at this point, but maybe they should be? And specifically, I'm thinking of RIA. We've used that as a swing space in the past for other schools. It seems like an incredibly old building. We've got some great programming there, and is that in any of our plans for renovation? It's a beautiful campus with lots of
Right.
potential, and it just seems like an incredibly old building. And is it a wood frame building?
It is not for the most part. And actually, you're absolutely right. It's a very valuable resource for us, both with the academic program, but also with the facility itself. One, aside with the facility, all the area around the building is not, none of that is district property. That all belongs to the city. It's all part of Edgerton Park, or the best way to phrase that. So it's not our fields, nor, that's not a reason not to renovate it, but it's, many people don't realize that. I think in this, we have to make decisions, and I think ultimately, we have a lot of buildings that could fit that criteria that really could use renovation, but the money is fixed, and these are the buildings we're recommending fit within that fixed dollar figure and fit within our current academic plans and programming. I think that's the best way for me to answer that, because we have a lot of buildings that would fall under that great academic programs, but you can't do them all. I guess that's the
Right.
best way to say it.
Okay, thank you so much.
And I would just add to that, that we only have 475 million. And so there are decisions that we have to make. And I'll keep before this board the fact that we don't know what increased costs may be. And so it's just very important that we are reminded of that, that we only have, a certain amount of money. So Commissioner Simmons?
Yes, thank you, President Elliott. Just help me out with my learning curve, because you mentioned CIP, and you may have already touched this information, I may have missed it. But, so my understanding is there's facilities building management, and that's for regular upkeep and maintenance of buildings. And then the modernization, of course, is to make us innovative and accommodate increased learning or what have you. And so I guess my question is, are any of the CIP things, just the automated things that should be happening, are they creeping into the cost associated with the F&P at all? Because I know we have the older buildings, and so how does that work, or how do we keep those dollars separate? How does that work?
I think twofold. One, the primary reason why our internal capital program, which is we work through the state of New York in this program, is the scale of the work. We really only have the ability over the course of a summer to do reasonably sized projects over that 3 or 4 month period without disrupting the school year. So with that, taking a building and completely renovating it would not really be possible. And we're also limited in our debt by the city, so we don't have the ability to borrow this kind of money. So that's why our capital program is more for deferred maintenance. And you'll see some of the work of the Commissioner Moreland mentioned the pools. With that, we've had pools on that, and you'll see some more on there, fixing mechanical systems of pools or gymnasiums or whatever it might be. That may be a targeted piece of work that we would do through a CIP. So I think for us, being very strategic. Right, you want to make sure whatever you do in your small capital program, you don't take out and redo it as part of your modernization. So as we're putting together some of this work here at these buildings, we just recently did a pretty large capital project at Wilson. Well, not taking all that apart to put it, we're going to try to expand on what we've done. Right, I think that is the strategic part of it that we work through internally in regards to that. And it is confusing, right? I think we have a lot of different acronyms, and I think the most important part of it is when we're doing work that's reimbursed by the state, we still fall into those same constructs. So we have to make sure that it's eligible for reimbursement and that it fits within the individual school's MCA and also fits within our academic and facility plans.
Thank you.
Yep.
Vice President LeBron?
Yes, I do. Thank you. First, the question, I do want to get confirmation of the total amount for Phase 3 for FMP again. What that total-
$475 million.
Okay. So I was just, I like to calculate numbers. So this plan leaves us a little close to 3 million short. Is there a buffer that you guys put into the plan? Is that what it is?
I knew you were going to do the math, so I did
I
not
was
want to
doing
go
the math
over.
along the way. I'm like, let me calculate what we got here, especially if we're doing an MAC at Franklin and doing the maximum there, so.
Estimates are the key, right? So it would not do us any good to come right up on 475 even. I think so, right, we have a lot of work to do to get to more actuals. But you're right, I think we're a little bit, about $2.93 million shy of 275. And
Okay.
we strategically did that because we wanted to make sure that we emphasized the word estimate, because this is really very, very early in this process in terms of construction dollars.
No, that's good. It just tells us that there's a buffer in case a number shows up higher along the way for one of the buildings. So I wrote down some questions along the way. I'm going to go back to those. I'm going to start from the back.
So while she's asking that, so while she's getting her questions together, but is there a contingency that's built in for each school?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah. So you mentioned, so I'm going to start from the back just for the questions, because you mentioned schools not renovated through FMP, but I thought School 19 was renovated through some FMP in the last phase.
Not FMP dollars. We did some very large capital projects there.
Okay,
We
so
did
those
the
were all
entranceway.
CHIP projects, CIP
So-
projects, I mean?
In your packet of information, also posted on board docs, was a select project history since 2010, and you'll see CIP work there for School 19 and some of the other schools that were not on the list that we've talked about prior, to see the CIP work that was done.
Yeah, I saw that, but I don't see where it says it was CIP, so I was kind of confused by that.
So the up top part for East, Edison, Franklin, and Monroe, those are the FMP ones, and then everything else underneath there is CIP.
Oh, well, it does not say that,
Okay.
Dr. Paluso, let me call you formally. It does not say that, so if you just want to update it so that it could read that these were CIP projects and these were the FMP from the last phase, because I was like, oh, I thought I saw 15 there. And then I do want to go back to, so let me just put it out there again, and every single FMP meeting until Franklin is done, that it has my full support to do an MAC and max out, and really restore that entire building to the infrastructure that it deserves, and that the kids that attend that building deserves. So I just want to put that out there. I don't personally have any issues with the numbers you're presenting for these schools tonight. So if there's a vote or a yes you're looking for from me, it's going to be a yes. If we have a resolution, I know we don't have one tonight, that this is more information sharing, but I just want to put it out there. For the buildings that we close, I know, Mike, you just mentioned School 25 went back. I just emailed City Council about this today, school number 25. Just trying to figure out, as you all may or may not be aware, that some City Council members want our closed schools to be converted into housing, which I support to some degree. I think there's some things that we would have to ensure that it's affordable housing. And we've had some conversations around even potential future, what that may look like, but 25, if that just went back this year, what is the city, has the city indicated to you what their plan is for the building?
Not recently, no.
Okay. I'm just curious, because I feel like that's where city council should start then. They have a building, start with that building, use ARP dollars and convert that building into housing, and let's see how that works before, you know, the conversations move into us closing additional schools so that they can convert into housing. I think they should start with that particular building. I'm going to stop right there, President Elliott. If I have additional questions, I'll go second round, but.
Thank you, Vice President LeBron. Commissioner Patterson, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. Just I'm looking forward to the managed choice policy and reexamining that. You know, to see what type of cost-saving measure that would be. So I would suggest that, you know, maybe the district or administration begin, you know, looking at those numbers and be prepared for those conversations. But that's what I'm going to be looking for, is how much would that save us in busing and, you know, other areas.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Patterson. And before, Vice President, you have more questions? Okay. So let me just take this opportunity, because I don't think I've done this before, and thank the Rochester Joint Construction Board for the work that they're doing. Many of those members on the board, included Chairman Richards, and some others are there, volunteer. Ron Gaither's there's a volunteer, and probably some others. But I just want to thank the board for doing this work. They have gone through, they have oversaw 2 phases for us so far, and enter into a 3rd phase. And, we have been remiss in not thanking them for the work that they have done for us on behalf of the Rochester School District. And, Mike, you participating over there. Thank you all for all of that work. And I probably should have said that today when I was at the meeting, but I'll get an opportunity to say it again. So I just wanted to put that out there and thank them for their work, hard work.
The city representatives are Jesse Dudley, Rich Perrin, and Kim Jones. They're the represent the city part of it, and then myself, Sean, and with this our CFO, and Ms. Spitzer Gaither.
Well, all of you, thank you. I know at one point it was a volunteer. Mostly when it first started, like back in 2006, many of the members on there were volunteers. So thank you very much. Any other questions for Mike? Hearing none, thank you very much. And I think the only other thing is for us, can I get a motion to move into executive session?
President
to-
Elliott? Oh, excuse me. We have the academic item.
Oh, excuse me. All right. So there are a couple of items on the Board of Education side of the academic plan by the state monitor that we have to discuss and have to make a decision about, what we are going to do. One is around racial bias training, and the other one,
Self-evaluations.
self-evaluations. And so I'll start with the racial bias training. We did not complete that, and we are in violation if we don't come up with a determination of how we're going to move forward on that. So let me just open this up because, again, if we don't have a decision, a determination about what we're going to do moving forward, that will continue to be a violation. So let me offer up, open it up for conversation around some alternatives. Many of us were not, were not satisfied with the former consultant. And I'll say to you, in my own learning, I'm just understanding really. I thought that the meetings that we were having was going to provide us with an opportunity, at least in the beginning, just to talk about the racial issues that we may have from this board. And that's not what it was. It was about bias. And what I'm understanding that what the state monitor is asking for us is, in terms of the way in which this board makes decisions, that we have to look at if there's any of our own personal racial bias impact into the decisions that this board made. For whatever reason, I didn't get that before. And I thought that my thinking is that it would have been an opportunity for us to really begin to figure out, white supremacy and, have those conversations, really go to blows, if you will, without going to blows, to share what our own perspectives. And that didn't happen. We didn't get an opportunity for that to happen. And so that was my understanding. And now I get an understanding that we need to look at if there's any racial bias implication in the decisions that we make in terms of our support on resolutions or whatever the case may be. And so that's my understanding of them. Let me just open it up if there are any other comments. And then I would like for us, if we can, tonight, to make a decision on how we're going to move forward, because the plan is due when, Rahima? When is?
You're slated to approve it in the business meeting on Thursday.
Yeah, all right. So let me just open up. Commissioner Malloy?
Thank you. Yeah, I think ultimately, as a board, we have to, come to a decision together and have these conversations. But ultimately, as a board member, I'm going to respect the view of the majority on the board. I think this is necessary. However, I think that we're still unclear as to what the expectations are from Dr. Jallo, what she first set forth. And I don't know if Dr. Jallo is on tonight, but it would be really helpful if she could clarify what the intent was, what the original intent was. That was never, I mean, she kind of left it open-ended and up to ourselves, and I think that's where some of the problem has come in. We've never really had an opportunity to have an open discussion with one another, and we need it. But I would love to have clarification about the expectations and where the state wants us to go, because we're getting a lot of different answers from different people. And I think it would behoove us to move in that direction and get some clear definitions about what we hope to achieve by this training, ultimately.
All right.
Just clarified by Dr. Jallo.
Thank you. Commissioner Simmons?
Yeah, I would want
Oh, I'm sorry.
clarity on, between racial bias, or if there's a request for us to make sure that we are developing an anti-racist lens, which looks much different than racial bias. And to be black and brown does not signify that I would have an anti-racist lens, because like love is an action word. So if I'm going to look through policies and allocation of resources and making sure that we are setting up our black and brown children for success in this structurally racist system, then I would want to make sure that I'm developing an anti-racist lens. And I think that people become scared when you start to say the word race, and it becomes a personal thing. And so I'm not going to personalize it at this time, but for me, that would be a beneficial training because it's active, and we can look through our policies with that lens. There's some capacity building, however, that would need to come with that.
So anti-racism training versus racial bias training? Two very different things. Okay. All right. Commissioner Adams? Thank you, Commissioner Simmons.
So for me, let me say, we keep talking about this last training that we had, but we had two trainings. We had one that I thought was very good. It didn't go well with us as a group, but I didn't have any issues with that, the first training that we had got with Mr. Muhammad. I thought he did well. People got in their feelings, and that's what we need to do, is get in our feelings and have legitimate discussion. But this leads to the other issue that we're going to talk about today, the board evaluation. If we can't look at this racism thing through the right lens, how's we going to do a legitimate self-evaluation? So it's like goes hand in hand. I already explained, I responded to the email today saying that I'd rather not even do the self-evaluation, because people's not even going to be the lens that we are going to be looking at it through. We all look at stuff too differently. And we go into our campaign mode and stuff like that. So that's all I got to say. I'm not going to keep rambling about this, but that's what I have to say.
Vice President LeBron, you have any comments?
I do. I just appreciate Commissioner Adams so much. I do agree with Commissioner Simmons and also Commissioner Malloy around clarity first and foremost, because President Elliott, what you just described and mentioned is not what I understood the training to be from Dr. Jallo's lens or perception, you know, when she first introduced it. And I do wish she was here tonight, and in full transparency, I ask that this not be added to tomorrow, because I have my own full agenda tomorrow. Mentally, I'm like, don't even want to go down this rabbit hole. But what I will say is that for me, I also, the way that it's written, even for new board members, if the training requires that it could be part of an onboarding process, then clearly that indication can't be that the training is a monthly or even like these long ongoing trainings, if you will, with a moderator, which is what you all were trying to do previously. That didn't even connect to that recommendation. So I just want to put that out there. So I would personally also like it to be like the sexual harassment training, that if that's the case, that you can go get it somewhere and bring back evidence that you went through the training and bring it back. Because what's not written explicitly is a requirement that the board has to do it together. And I think that's, again, the reality is, I do not think that you can take 7 adults who have different perspectives and 7 different views and force them into a training that's going to make them all have this equitable lens of how they view things, especially like Commissioner Simmons mentioned more eloquently, because she's a better speaker than I am, because she is a masterful with words. I am not, but what I will say is all black folks ain't kin folks, and that's how I'm gonna leave it at that. But there are other issues that comes with that. And so for me personally, I would rather that we just focus on the work. And if the view for Dr. Jallo is that she wants us to have some equity lens, or if it's anti-racist policy view, whatever the case may be, that is explicit and that we're able to do it individually and onboard new members to, and that we keep it moving. I do want to add, though, to what Commissioner Adams is referencing is Dr. Muhammad. I, too, would support Dr. Muhammad coming back, if that's Dr. Jallo's intention, is to do some additional group and board, team building, if you will. That looks very different than saying anti-racist training versus board collective training. Because at the end of the day, for me, I can speak for me only. If I don't like you, I'm not gonna win. No training is going to make me like you. If I don't like you and I don't respect you, no training, but I can focus on the work. Because I sit up here for meetings for people who chair them who I can't stand, and I wouldn't even spit on if they were on fire. However, I sit here and I do my part of reading the materials and coming prepared to meetings and engaging with them as the chair and respecting them in that moment as the chair. But when I leave here, I don't talk to these people. They don't live in my neighborhood. I've never seen them on my block. I won't see them on my block after this. That's just the reality. They're all here. We're all here because we got elected from a vast majority of folks in this community who also have different views and perceptions. And I'll just leave it at that. So I'm not interested in fake collegiality with my colleagues. I am interested in focusing on the work and gaining any tools that I need to be a better commissioner for myself to do this work. But as a team, there are just some of us I would never vibe and gel with. So I just had to put that all out there.
Commissioner Patterson, do you have any input in the conversation?
I do, thank you. For me, I just took a few notes. As a board, we should be the example. We should set the example for the entire administration. With the training it was my first year, obviously, and just a few months in, so the training with me I had no issue with. With regard to restorative practices, that's another note that I put here. If we expect our students to participate in restorative practices, my thought is that we ought to be the example and set the example for that and have our own form of restorative practices. Therefore, when we talk about the self-evaluation, how do we evaluate others if we're not willing to evaluate oneself? So again, we must set the example, and everything permeates downward, throughout the system. So if the system doesn't see us self-evaluating and taking a look at ourselves, a deep look at ourselves, how do we or why do we expect the system or the administration or, all these employees to, evaluate themselves or participate in any evaluation? So for me, it's just be the example, set the example. Thank you.
So let me just get some clarification. Were you speaking specifically about the board self-evaluation, or in that conversation included the racial bias piece as well?
No, I spoke specifically to the
Board evaluation?
Board evaluation.
Okay, all right, thank you. Commissioner Malloy?
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to highlight what first Vice President LeBron was saying about making this some type of, this is regarding the racial bias training. If there is clarification around that, like having something very similar to what we do with the sexual harassment training, bloodborne pathogen training that other employees undergo, if there's something that we could access in our own time, if that's what Dr. Jallo is suggesting. Whereas I think it would be helpful to have someone like Dr. Mohammed come back if what they're looking for is just more cohesiveness between us as a governing body, I think we're all on a continuum and we're in different places, and certainly the training that I might need is going to look different maybe than other training that other people might need. It's not a one-size-fit-all sort of thing, and I think that as mature adults we can come up with something that's going to be acceptable for our group so that we can work as a governing body in a respectful manner to one another. And ultimately, I can only worry about myself and my own training. I can't force anything on anyone else. So if the board comes up with a provider or training they think is going to work for the group, and that is the decision of the majority, I will respect that. But again, a lot of us are doing a lot of these types of trainings outside of school, like in our own careers as well. If there's a way that we can get credit for some of the work or provide evidence of what we are doing to undergo our own training, that might also be a possibility as well. In terms of the board's self-evaluation, I know just through the numerous NYSBA trainings that I've been to in the past year or two, it is highly recommended that boards, they don't mandate it, but the board's self-evaluation is an important tool, and it's supposed to be used in conjunction with, the way that we review our superintendent on a yearly basis, but, applying the same standards to ourselves. Again, we can't force everyone to do that, but we can still hold those conversations if we need to. But I think it's a good practice, and it is NYSBA recommended, and I think it adds to not so much collegiality, but our ability to just, work effectively as a governing board.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Commissioner Simmons?
Yes, President Elliott, I don't know if this is appropriate right now, because it's a question around the FMP, and I know we've kind of moved on. Maybe
You have a question for it?
I can maybe ask Rahima to put it into the question log. I just really wanted to know if we had a 5-year CIP plan.
Oh, yeah.
And the dollars that are used, like how does that CIP plan, I want to try to increase my
You should have a
capacity
copy of
around
that,
this.
or it's online. You either have a copy of it, a hard copy, or it's also,
Okay, for just the specific allocated
CIP.
CIP pieces, okay.
yeah,
Then I didn't put it in right.
okay. Yeah, Vice President LeBron?
So 2 points. In terms of modeling restorative, I think this whole entire district actually needs to be retrained on restorative, because lots of conversations that we've seen even with administration and some decisions, that's not restorative. Like, it does not mean that everything is kumbaya and that there's no actual consequences, or that people are forced to accept apologies. Like, that is not restorative. What it is, though, it is a different avenue for people to come together to try to restore the harm that they may have caused, but it doesn't have to be accepted by the other party. And in fact, the other party could just refuse straight up to have any part of the conversation or a sit down. Like, that is part of the restorative practice. So I just share that because I do think we hear people all of the time, especially this latest version, just misusing restorative practice. So that's one. Two, and I just say that for folks also listening, that this is a model of restorative. I don't have to sit down with anyone and hear their side out if I don't want to. That's my restorative. That's me keeping my own sanity. But the other piece I just want to add in regards to the board's self-evaluation, I too sent an email. Didn't realize you also had sent one, Commissioner Adams, saying I didn't support it. Primarily because, honestly, there's a million more important things in this district to focus on and do. And I just personally don't want to spend time on things that don't directly result into an impact either on how we're allocating finances so that they support students or academically supporting students. It's just no, and personally, and this is not a jab at NYSBA either, but I'm good, if you look at NYSBA's leadership and their guidance on where I get that from, I'm good on that. And I just have to say that because if you can show me evidence that a board evaluation leads to a better district, hell yeah, I'll do it today. If it doesn't, I don't want to do it. I want to focus on fixing what we need to fix.
Commissioner, thank you, Vice President. Commissioner Adams?
And so I just would like to say one last thing, and I'm going to stay in this rabbit hole, but it's my experience that us as board members, man, we don't take critique. I'm telling you, they critiqued me like 2 years ago. I was in the newspaper, and they told me in the executive session, you were wrong. The law don't go like this, and somebody leaked it to the, and I apologized And it wasn't even easy. I wanted to double down. Most people do double down on this board. They double down on, they don't just inhale it and try to make a change. I apologize for making a statement that was wrong, that they said the lawyer told me it was wrong. But that is not the case on most situations. It wasn't easy for me, and I don't expect it to be easy for nobody else. So us being honest, we all like to double down on our position. So to think that we're going to be trying to be do more than that, man, I think it's stretching too much, and it's causing us not to be focused. We have so much other stuff to be focused on right now. We 3 grades behind, man. 3 grades behind on the average in this district. We need to focus on that, man, and I'm done.
Yeah, so I would say that, Dr. Jallow will have to articulate her position, but I would think that the reason that she put those 2 pieces in for us in the recommendation was because we were dysfunctional. We're dysfunctional. And perhaps doing the racial bias training as well as the board self-evaluation will help us to try to improve ourselves. So from my perspective, I believe that it was a part of us getting better in terms of the reason that she included those pieces. So having said that, where is the board? Let's just look at the racial bias piece.
Can I just?
Yeah,
Before you, because you're going to ask to make a decision separately, but she's asking to remove, her latest recommendation is to remove the board self-evaluation. So when I
Okay.
met with her today, she
all
said
right.
she was
And
gonna-
I've been having email problems, so I haven't
Yep,
had a
yep.
chance to look at
So,
it. So she's asking to remove the
And I-
self-evaluation
the
piece.
self-evaluation, and Rahima had, our board clerk sent an
Okay.
email asking if people wanted to keep it or not, because she wasn't clear where folks were
Okay.
at with the
Right.
board.
If I
But
could just-
Dr. Jallo's recommendation is to remove it, and similar, I had a conversation with her today, and it was the same thing, like, she doesn't see the reason. There's other stuff we could be doing and
Yeah.
focusing on.
All right, so let's just take, Commissioner Patterson?
That's not the conversation I had with Dr. Jello at our last meeting. I brought that up and raised that up, or raised that question and the importance of having the self-evaluation. And Dr. Jello indicated that it would be the board's decision. She would leave it up to the board. So initially, yes, she said she wanted to remove it. After the conversation that we all had, or were privy to at the last meeting, she agreed to allow the board members to make a decision on whether or not they thought that was important and to keep it or remove it. So you're right, Madam President. We need to take it to the vote, and the community needs to see which board members are in support of self-evaluation and which ones aren't.
Yeah.
And just for some
Let me,
clarity.
hold on, let me just, nope, hold on. Let me just make some clarification. That was probably information from a previous meeting, but there's been some recent information that has, that we have. And so from the recent information, what I'm understanding is that she is indicating that we don't have to do it. So, well, let me just finish. So that's where we are with that now. That information was a decision that was made last week. And the fact is that, well, I'll just leave it at that for right now. I just want to give that clarification. So let me go to Vice President LeBron.
I just want to clarify so that folks in the community, because I hate when people intentionally try to confuse them. The entire recommendations from Dr. Jallow are just that, recommendations. The board can push back. The board, as a body, can say we agree, we don't agree. If we don't agree, and Dr. Jallow insists on it being there, then we have to have a public hearing where the state commissioner eventually makes the final determination, and our state commissioner is Dr. Betty Rosa. So that's just clarification for the community listening in. We don't have to accept the recommendations as a body, as they're written. We do have a right to agree or disagree with them, and then Dr. Jallow has a right to say, okay, let me hear your reasons for disagreeing. I agree with them. I'm going to remove it, or she can say, no, I don't agree with your reasons, I'm gonna leave it in, and we're gonna have this public hearing and let the commissioner hear both sides. The commissioner will hear our side of why we're making a recommendation for it to stay or be removed. Dr. Jallo will make her point, and ultimately, she makes the final determination. So I just want to put that out there, because I don't want people to be confused that we have to accept it as it is, or that it is only the board's decision. It is not. It is a process that includes the commissioner and ourselves as a body. So yes, but right now as it stands, and I heard her on Tuesday, what she said is the board can choose to keep it in there if they want to. We can vote on that. But right now, her recommendation, as it's written, is to remove that recommendation.
And can I expound on
Thank you.
that,
Yeah, go ahead.
please, for clarity? What Dr. Jallo said to Vice President LeBron's last point is that she was recommending removal of it from the plan because there were other priority items she felt we could focus on. But what she also said is removing it from the plan that was not indicative of us not necessarily doing it. She was feeling that, you know, as a board, if we feel, to Commissioner Patterson's point, that this is something valuable to us, then we should automatically do it. Does it have to be written in a plan? Do we need something to be written in a plan for us to execute it? So removal from the plan or not, we do need to determine as a board if this is something we find value in and if we want to pursue it. But it doesn't have to be in a plan for us to do it, is what she was explaining.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Miller, you had your hand up?
Yeah, and just ultimately, I'm going to agree with what the body, votes for as a whole, and I'll respect whatever decision is made. It would be really helpful if we could have these conversations with Dr. Jallo present. With all due respect, we're paying this person quite a bit of money to sit in on our meetings and help us out as a board. We need the help. And so I really need clarification on this. We all do. Just clearly defined expectations for the board if these are trainings that we need to do. And so this isn't regarding the evaluation. This is more the racial bias training. What does that entail? We really need to have these discussions with Dr. Jallo present.
Now, I'm on the other end. I like the latitude so that I can develop it myself, but, we need something different even there. So, Commissioner Adams, do you have any
No, I'm good.
input? Okay, all right. So, with regard to the racial bias training, it appears that we are interested in either having Dr. Muhammad, if he's available, or that we do some of this work ourselves. So if it's I'm not sure what's out there, but that we do it for ourselves individually and to bring back that what we have, worked on. Commissioner Malloy?
Yeah, and just to highlight what you just said, I think that the provider, Dr. Muhammad, is doing something completely different rather than, this is more board interactions with one another, and I don't want to say team building per se, but similar to what Vice President LeBron was saying earlier about, these are two very different providers or trainings, and so we need that clarification from Dr. Jallo on what our next steps should be as a board. I love Dr. Muhammad. I thought he was very helpful for his area of expertise and what he was doing, but it was not bias training or that. It was more reconciliation as a board, working together, any number of other things, but it was not bias training.
Vice President?
Yeah, I just want to, again, say, though, that tonight, I guess the question is whether we're going to modify the recommendation or keep it as is. If we keep it as is, then we're in violation. So I think that's what we have to decide tonight, because Dr. Jallo has intentionally also left some of these vague, and she has said that repeatedly, like, to see what we come up with, and she can let us know along the way is, yes, it's going in alignment. But I think tonight it's more about modifying or keeping as is. I'm in support of modifying. What that looks like, I think it could be an additional conversation with this board, with Dr. Jallo, to hone in on what that looks like, so that she's a part of the conversations. She does teach on Mondays. I just have to throw that out there. Mondays and Wednesdays, which is why she's not, and this is not a typical meeting for us on a Monday night. So I just want to put that out there. And then two, the second recommendation is if we want to remove it or keep it. But to Commissioner Simmons' point, if it's removed, there's nothing that stops any board member from saying, I want to do my own self-evaluation and post it. But I'm just not interested in a self-evaluation that means nothing and that people aren't going to be even honest about their behaviors and the supports and training and help that they need. So I'll just leave it at that. I'm in support of removal of the self-evaluation and then modification of the first one.
And so we are somewhat clear about what that modification for the racial bias training would look like that we would do, and it may not even be racial bias. It depends on what you all are deciding, in terms of race issues, what that looks like for each individual. And so maybe that's the language that we put in there, that we would each individually participate in some form of, and I don't know if it's race bias or racism or to Commissioner Simmons' point, anti-racism, that depends. Now, the problem becomes, well, not a problem, when are we going to get that done? We have to have that included within the recommendation. And so would everybody be okay with saying by the end of the quarter that we will have participated in some form of racial bias training?
Absolutely.
Or whatever. Forgive me for that word.
Because
It could be
there's
something
reports
else.
that when you speak about racial bias training, like scientific,
Don't
I'm
take me-
looking at one now, I'm not going to get into it. No, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
But there is something that's saying there's little evidence. I was just looking
Yeah.
up the article, that it leads to meaningful change in behavior. So like being very mindful and intentional about what we put in front of us, and also that the outcome that we get from this training not only makes us more effective board members, but more importantly, board members that are effective for the children. If it does not pipeline back to outcomes for children, then we are wasting our time, especially to Commissioner Adams' point, that our district obviously needs some help. So if the actions we take all need to go back to the babies.
I just want to add to
Vice
that, though, that the recommendation is also for onboarding new members, right? So we're going to have to identify what that potentially looks like. If we are doing it on our own, I do think then whatever vendors and trainings are out there that we go to or that we involve ourselves, that then it's part of the menu for new board members to then select from. Like, these are the trainings we've gone through so far to give them a head start. And to be honest, this should be required anyway, like finance training should be required every year, but I'm gonna digress and leave it at that. Again, tonight, I do think that we don't need to decide what that looks like tonight. I think because of the plan due Thursday, that it's more around whether we modify or not, and then remove or keep. And then we can potentially just have another conversation with Dr. Jallo around the modification, what that potentially could look like, what she wants to see, if she has some ideas on some potential trainings, if we go out on our own to do, that she feels like, yeah, the other folks at the state or other folks from different boards have gone through this training and they swear by it, she could do that. Because I'm in agreement with Commissioner Malloy tonight around the purpose of Dr. Muhammad, and the work that we did with him was really about board team building and working through some racially charged conversations, because that was my perception of our work with Dr. Muhammad, but we just didn't continue and finish that work.
And so I'm going to add something else into this. As I had conversations with Rahima around this, and looking at the racial bias lens and how it impacts our decisions around resolutions and what have you. This is the kind of conversation now we need to have with our district, right? So is there a decision that's being made in the resolution that could be considered racist, and without even knowing, right? Could it be considered racist? And so I think that as a board, we may need to begin to have those kinds of conversations, because people are really, there are people who are unaware of their racism and biases and those kinds of things. So how do we help the district? If we're going to be going through this training ourselves, how do we carry that training on to our district and help them uplift and identify where it may be a racist kind of situation, and help them to change for the betterment of Black and brown children in this community, in this district. So I just thought about that, and I think that we can utilize that kind of training in order to help the majority white population that works within our district. We got to help them with that. So conclude this, what are we saying? We're going to eliminate the board self-evaluation, unless there are people that want to do it, that they can do it, but it will not be a part of the state monitor's plan, and that we're going to individualize the kind of training as it relates to racism or anti-racism or racial bias that we're going to participate in.
So we're gonna
Commissioner,
vote.
Vice,
Yeah,
We're gonna vote.
we're gonna vote, yeah, I think we should take a vote for it officially because.
so
it's
are
part of the
we
change
clear
of the
about
plan.
what I'm saying? Do I need
Well,
to repeat
let me,
that?
for the first point, yes to the second point, that it's just removed, and if people want to do it themselves, go ahead and do it yourselves and post it up. But two, again, I just want to stress that it's just whether we're modifying it or keeping it as is. If we're modifying, I don't think we necessarily need to define it tonight, right now. However, I do think, and I will give space on either agenda, human resources or finance, to have a conversation with Dr. Jallo in terms of modification. Perhaps you can give us some greater insights to maybe some of the trainings that she thinks she would want us to do or utilize. Because we got to think about ourselves, but we also got to think about new board members being onboarded and what that looks like. And I think the options have to be available to both current and future board members.
Yeah, but to have a conversation between now and Thursday when we have to vote on it?
No, the vote only is requiring us to modify it. Oh, we have to have what
We have to
the
vote on the
modification
plan,
looks
right?
like by Thursday?
On Thursday, we're slated to approve the whole updated plan.
Also, then you, to everything President Elliott,
Yes.
you just said, yeah, then, I think we can still do that, and let me just also put it out there that there's nothing that stops the board from going back to a recommendation and say, hey, can we have a conversation about potentially modifying it again? And that Dr. Jallo has been gracious with us to say yes and has put it in writing when we have made modifications. So just to put it out there, that these are hard deadlines, but there are some flexibility with the actual recommendations beyond the deadlines due to the state and so forth.
Yeah, and let me just say again, because Commissioner Malloy, you made a statement that I want to just check, if I can, that, Dr. Jallo makes all this money. She's in class tonight. There's latitude. You may need more specificity. I like latitude. And so, I want us to work together to try to get this done correctly. So I just want to make sure that, we're not throwing Dr. Jallo under the bus. I no longer want to throw anybody under the bus. So I just want to be clear about that we got to make sure that we're taking care of everybody here. So anything else that we need to say for the good of this?
Are we going to vote?
Do we need to vote? Or is that just a consensus? Adrian is working hard. Yeah.
Yes, I'm trying to type up a quick draft motion. The board know how I feel about kind of straw polls. So I have some, I'm working on some recommended language. Just give me another 30 seconds.
Okay.
All right, okay. So, we'll just move forward.
Yeah.
We'll move forward, because we got a lot of work to do here, a heavy lift, but we could do it. We can do it.
Now, just for clarity, would you be taking this manually then? Because the resolution's being typed up now?
Yes,
Is
I
that
would
a
take the
resolution
vote
that's being typed?
manually.
Yeah,
It's a
he's typing
motion.
up a resolution real quick.
Yes, we would take it manually, and then I would go back.
Anything else that we have to discuss? Is that it? We just have to go into executive session. It's okay.
Yep, so the language I have is a motion to support the state monitor's proposal that recommendation 5 from table 9 relating to board self-evaluations be removed. And also, the board will seek clarification with the state monitor on recommendation 4 in table 5 and will ultimately engage in the clarified training.
No, so we actually, council, we have to support whether we're modifying or changing it, and then whether we support the removal, which is what she's written up until this point. I think the second part is a little confusing. The first part, yes, but the second part is that we're voting in support of modification And then President Elliott, I think you said.
Which will include individualized training,
Is that what you said?
something to
Counsel?
that.
Right.
Oh,
So-
did you?
so-
Okay.
So I
Okay.
actually, I tackled the easier one first, which is the self-evaluation.
Yeah, it's just
That is
removal.
being removed, so it said,
Motion to support the state monitor's proposal at recommendation 5, from table, that recommendation.
Should be something about
Recommendation
modifying.
9, right, recommendation
Yes.
9 from table 5, relating to to board self-evaluations be removed from the academic plan. And also, the board will seek clarification, because that's what I heard, with the state monitor regarding recommendation 4 in table 5, but will ultimately engage in some form of, racial or
Modification.
anti-bias or training. So the board is looking to modify?
She said we either have to modify or keep the recommendation as is, and if we kept it as is, then we're in violation, but she's giving us the opportunity to modify, which she has from the very beginning, because there was issues around it anyway. And I think clarity issues was what also led to the issues in the first place. So we're looking for clarity from her, but not necessarily to vote on that clarity tonight. But we are looking to modify it, and I think we should say, this is what, we're gonna support modification and have a resolution. What that modification looks like, we don't know at this time, but we wanna engage with the state monitor to give us some additional guidance and direction and support.
So I'm thinking, is a resolution really necessary, or is it because we're going to vote? I'm just wondering if a resolution is necessary, except to make the changes in the plan and then vote on it on Thursday.
Yeah, I agree with that, actually.
Yeah.
I agree with that,
Right?
because we're modifying, she says modify or keep as is. So if we're modifying, then that's the one I think we vote on. I don't think we even have to vote on the other one, because her actual recommendation is to remove. This is what she has submitted right now, so.
Well, so long as, I think if come Thursday, that the board is gonna be in agreement, because I think there was at least maybe one dissent, in regards to what direction the board is going to go, so that's why I thought I'll vote at this point, right? Fully acknowledging that, right, the formal, I guess, acceptance,
We are missing someone too, this
right,
evening
will
too.
come
so, yeah.
Thursday. So,
Right.
yeah, it's up to the board. I mean, the board could take something tonight or just wait until Thursday to act on it.
Yeah, and let's get some
As a
language.
body.
Yeah, having a conversation with Dr. Jallo, we've had this conversation. It seems that in terms of the actual racial bias, that we're looking at racial bias or anti-racism or racism, that language, and we're going to do it on the individualized basis. And we'll have that completed by the end of the quarter. Is that when the next, I don't know what the date is. We'll have that completed by whenever the end date is, the deadline is. So, does that sound right? If we could put some language together around that? Is that cool?
Yes, if I could just interject for a moment. Yes, we can do that and put some language forth. In terms of your question around when to complete for the quarter, the last conversation I had with Dr. Jallo, the recommendation was to give commissioners until the end of the school year, so until June 30th,
Oh, okay.
2023, to complete. This way you have time to find something if
Okay.
you don't already have it in the pipeline.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, I just want to add that.
Yeah, let me get Commissioner Adams. I think you had something, Commissioner Adams, or are you just looking?
The only thing I would say is if we're gonna hold off to Thursday, then we don't have to do all of this conversation again on Thursday.
That's right. That's right, that's right. That's right. Commissioner, Vice President LeBron?
No, I actually want to thank the board clerk, because she just mentioned the date, but it was also her conversation with the monitor to help us as part of the modification to push back that date, so thank you.
Yeah. All right, so we all hearts are cleared on that. Can I get a motion to go into executive
Second.
section? Let me just put it on record what I'm
Pull up
supposed to
the
say. Y'all wait. Yeah, let me pull it up. Motion to enter into executive session to discuss matters leading to the appointment or employment of a particular person or corporation as permitted by Section 105 of the Open Meetings Law. So I have a second by Commissioner Adam, a motion by Commissioner Adams and second by Commissioner Malloy. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So we will we will end the meeting down at the Superintendent's Conference Room, and so we will say good night, and we'll see you all on Thursday. Have a good evening.